I caught my husband recording my private conversations, so I gave him a show he'll never forget. I found it by accident, wedged behind the headboard while changing the sheets on an ordinary Sunday afternoon, a small black device no bigger than a coin, its tiny red light blinking steadily in the dim light of our bedroom. My husband had been recording my private conversations, and I had no idea for how long I didn't confront him. I didn't remove it. I smiled, put the sheets back exactly as they were, and decided to give him something worth listening to. 2 nights later, I sat on the edge of that same bed and whispered into the dark about a hidden offshore account holding $4 million. The next morning, my husband rushed to the bank the moment it opened. Certain he was about to discover a fortune, what he found instead was 2 police officers waiting for him at the door. My name is Vanessa Cole. I'm 39 years old and I've spent 12 years working in forensic auditing, the kind of work that trains you to notice small inconsistencies long before most people would think to look for them. I review corporate books for a living, tracing money through disguised transactions, finding the discrepancies. People convince themselves no one will ever notice. It's patient work. It's the kind of work that teaches you the truth is almost always hiding in plain sight if you're willing to look closely enough. I never imagined I'd need those exact skills inside my own marriage. I certainly never imagined I'd need them to survive it. I married Derek Cole 9 years ago. He was handsome in an effortless way, charming at dinner parties, the kind of man who made people feel like they'd known him for years within minutes of meeting him. He worked in commercial real estate, decent money in good years, considerably less in bad ones, and over the course of our marriage. The bad years had become more frequent than either of us liked to admit out loud. I made significantly more than he did, a fact we'd both quietly agreed never to discuss directly. I never resented it. I loved him, or at least I loved the version of him I believed I'd married. I had no idea that the man sleeping beside me every night had started listening to me the way you'd listen to a stranger you were building a case against. The signs, looking back, had been there for months before I found that device. Derek asking oddly specific questions about a work call he shouldn't have known the details of, a strange comment he made once about my sister's financial troubles, details I was certain I'd only discussed with her privately, late one night on the phone. While Derek was supposedly asleep, I remember feeling a small flicker of unease each time, quickly smoothed over by whatever explanation felt easiest. He must have overheard the tail end of something. I must have mentioned it and forgotten. It was the Sunday I found the microphone that everything I'd been quietly dismissing rearranged itself into something I could no longer explain away. I pulled it free from the seam behind the headboard and sat there for a long moment, turning it over in my palm, a compact digital recorder, the kind of device you could buy online for under $50, designed specifically to be hidden and nearly impossible to notice unless you were looking directly at the spot where it's at. I felt something cold settle into my chest, followed almost immediately by a kind of sharp, focused clarity I recognized from years of audit work. I didn't need to guess who had placed it. There. Derek was the only other person with regular access to our bedroom, and the placement told me this had been deliberate, planned, running for some unknown length of time. I thought briefly about confronting him the second he walked through the door that evening. Instead, I placed the device back exactly where I'd found it, wedged into that same seam, its tiny red light blinking patiently, waiting for whatever I said next. 12 years of forensic work had taught me something more valuable than confrontation. People who believe they're getting away with something reveal far more of themselves when they don't know they've been caught. Over the following days, I watched Derek with the same careful detachment I brought to a suspicious set of financial records. I noticed how often he found reasons to be near his laptop late at night, headphones in, office door closed. I noticed a new external hard drive on his desk that hadn't been there before, angled away from view. Whenever I walked past, I noticed too a growing restlessness in him whenever conversation drifted toward money, toward my job, toward the financial cushion my career had built for us. Slowly I understood this wasn't jealousy or insecurity. Derek wasn't listening to catch me in an affair. He was listening for something else entirely. He was listening for money. I spent that week researching the device, confirming it was voice-activated with limited storage, which meant Derek had almost certainly been physically retrieving and reviewing recordings on some regular basis. Likely during hours I assumed he was at the gym or running errands. I thought about my sister's financial troubles, the comment he'd made months earlier. Piece by piece, I built a timeline in my head, and the answer, once I let myself calculate it honestly, was considerably longer than I wanted to admit. Months at minimum, possibly closer to a year. Sitting alone in my car outside the grocery store one afternoon, staring blankly through the windshield, I decided that if my husband wanted to listen to me that badly, I was finally going to give him something worth the effort, not the truth, something far more useful than the truth, a test carefully constructed, designed to reveal exactly what kind of man I'd married. I planned it over the following 2 days, choosing my words the way I choose language in a forensic report, precise, deliberate, nothing left to chance. I waited for a Tuesday night, one where Derek had mentioned an early meeting the next morning, meaning he'd likely check that recorder first thing, eager for whatever it had captured. Overnight, I climbed into bed a little after 11, waited until his breathing settled into the slow, even rhythm of real sleep, and then quietly slipped out, phone in hand, into the bathroom, pulling the door mostly closed behind me, leaving just enough of a gap for my voice to carry back toward that small blinking light. I dialed a number connecting to nothing, letting it ring twice before I began speaking into the silence, keeping my voice low, hushed, the register of someone who believes they're being extremely careful. "I can't talk long," I whispered, letting a practiced tremor color my voice. "He's asleep, but I don't want to risk it." I paused, as if listening to a response only I could hear. "No, he still doesn't know about the account. Came on Sovereign Trust, exactly like we discussed, just under 4 million, transferred out over the last 2 years, small enough increments it never triggered anything on our joint statements." Another pause. "I know, I need to move it before the divorce filing goes through. That's why I need that attorney's contact information this week." I let the fake conversation continue another 2 minutes, adding small believable details, a numbered account, a financial advisor named Marcus who supposedly structured the transfers, a comment about needing everything finalized before Derek's name could legally be attached to any of it in a settlement. I kept my voice hushed and uneven, and in some strange way, some part of me actually was afraid, not of being overheard, but of what I was about to learn about the man sleeping 20 feet away. I ended the call, waited a full minute in the bathroom to let the moment breathe, then slipped back into bed beside Derek, whose breathing hadn't changed at all. I lay there in the dark for a long time afterward, wondering if I'd just wasted an elaborate performance on nothing, or if I'd just planted a seed I couldn't yet fully predict. I didn't have to wait long to find out. Derek was gone before I woke the next morning, unusual only in that his text later canceled our dinner plans with a vague line about work running long, a phrase he used often enough that under normal circumstances I wouldn't have thought twice about it. That day, everything felt different. I called my sister, the real one, and casually asked if Derek had reached out recently for any reason. She said no, hadn't spoken to him in weeks. I checked our actual joint bank statements online, confirming what I already knew, no unusual transfers, because of course there wasn't. There had never been an offshore account. There had only ever been a whispered lie meant for an audience of one. By that evening, Derek came home later than usual. His energy shifted from quiet restlessness into something sharper, more agitated, the particular tension of a man doing calculations he didn't want anyone noticing. He asked unusually specific questions, whether I'd been in touch with any financial advisors recently, whether I'd mentioned anything to my sister about changes I might be considering. I answered every question with the same easy, unbothered honesty I'd have used months earlier, giving him nothing to confirm and nothing to deny, watching him grow visibly more restless with every non-answer. Thursday morning, Derek was already dressed when I woke, moving through the bedroom with an urgent, contained energy I hadn't seen from him in years. "Early appointment," he said, not quite meeting my eyes as he grabbed his keys. "Might run into the afternoon." I asked casually what kind of appointment required a suit at 7 in the morning. "Banking stuff," he said too quickly, already moving toward the door. "Nothing important." I watched him practically jog to his car through the kitchen window, the last small piece of doubt I'd been carrying finally settled into complete, undeniable certainty. What Derek didn't know, walking briskly into First Coastal Bank that morning, was that I'd made a call of my own 2 days earlier, to a detective named Raymond Kessler, a family friend who now worked financial crimes for the county and owed me more than one favor from an old fraud case I'd once helped him with. I hadn't told him everything. Just that my husband had illegally recorded private conversations inside our home, and that I suspected he was planning some financial move based on false information he believed he'd overheard. When I told him about the fake conversation, the $4 million, Raymond had gone quiet for a moment before saying, with something close to admiration, "You want to see exactly what he does with that, don't you?" I told him I did. Raymond explained that the recording device itself, capturing conversations without consent inside a private residence, likely violated state wiretapping statutes, giving law enforcement legitimate grounds to be involved well before any money entered the picture. He had 2 officers positioned near the branch entrance by the time Derek arrived that Thursday morning. According to Raymond's report, Derek walked in the moment the branch opened and asked to speak with a manager about consolidating accounts ahead of a pending legal matter, specifically inquiring about offshore holdings under my name, accounts that, notably, did not exist and that he had no legal standing to access even if they had. The branch manager, confused by pointed questions about a non-existent trust, grew suspicious enough within minutes to quietly alert the officers already waiting near the entrance. I wasn't there for the moment itself, though Raymond described it later with the restrained satisfaction of a man who genuinely enjoys watching a scheme collapse under its own weight. Once Raymond gently explained that Derek's questions aligned suspiciously well with a private bedroom conversation recorded on an illegal listening device. Found hidden in his own home, Derek didn't even attempt to deny the recorder existed. He simply stood there, going through the slow, visible process of understanding exactly how thoroughly he'd been caught and by whom. I filed for divorce 11 days later, citing the illegal recording device as grounds, along with a formal police report documenting Derek's attempted fraudulent bank inquiry. No criminal charges followed, since no actual funds were ever at risk, but it was enough to trigger a compliance review at his workplace once his employer learned. A manager there had been questioned by financial crimes detectives over a personal matter involving deception. Derek resigned from his position 3 weeks later, reportedly under quiet pressure. I kept the house. I kept my career, which if anything grew steadier in the months that followed, the same careful attention to small inconsistencies that had once felt like simply a professional skill now feeling like a form of self-protection I would never again take for granted. I think about that Tuesday night often, sitting on the edge of a bathroom sink whispering fiction into the dark, and how strange it is that the truth about a person can sometimes only be uncovered through a lie carefully offered like bait to something you already suspect is circling closer than it should be. Derek wanted to hear something worth acting on. I gave him exactly that. He never imagined the woman he'd been secretly recording for months was the one paying closest attention the whole time. If you'd found that device behind your own headboard, I wonder what you would have done differently, confronted him immediately, or waited the way I did to see exactly how far he'd go. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight, and let me know if you've ever had to outsmart someone who genuinely believed they were the only one paying attention. We have so many more stories like this one coming, so make sure you subscribe so you never miss a moment like this. Let's keep this journey going.